Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, April 20th, 2022. Yes, the date is not lost on me. And this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, just to remind you, we are a family-friendly podcast, as we try to be, so sometimes words do fly. And, of course, there may be things that might be shown that might be too graphic for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Well, if you're enjoying 420, as I know a lot of people of the cannabis community is, and happy toking, or however you choose to enjoy yourself. But aside from that, what news we have? Unfortunately, we have more involvement of police interactions and basically how they deal with people. Not even people themselves, but literally little kids. And this is the kind of stuff that you just can't make up.
Over 40,000 views so far on Facebook, including Syracuse's mayor issuing a statement about the incident tonight.
And now a controversial video of an 8-year-old being put in the back of a Syracuse police cruiser, and officers' actions are being viewed by the department. Just outside of a corner store, drawing all the attention and a bystander's cell phone camera, police leading an 8-year-old boy to a police car. He's accused of stealing a bag of chips. He's sobbing. People watching are shouting at police to leave the boy alone. This is only a portion of the video. It's filled with expletives.
Nah, man, what, he stole a bag of chips?
Syracuse police say the child was never arrested, never put in handcuffs, only placed in the back of the patrol car to take him to his father, who they met with. No charges were filed. Syracuse's mayor saying the officer knew the child from prior interactions and explained to him that he was being taken home. Just this week, our conversation with the mayor touched on the complexity of troubled kids, crime, and interactions with police.
We do need to make investments and are making investments that are more proactive in nature, that are trying to engage particularly young people that are headed in the wrong direction and try to get them pointed in the right direction.
And in this case, will lead to more discussions. In the mayor's words, what occurred demonstrates the continuing need for the city to provide support to our children and families and to invest in alternative response options to assist our officers. Now, all 3 officers seen in that video, they were all wearing body cameras, and that footage is going to be reviewed. The officers will remain on duty while that's being done.
So, issue with this, because again, I'm trying to be real nice about this. I am trying to be really nice about this. But number one, if the officer knew the child, why was the child freaking out? I'm like, that's the thing about it. The officer knew the child from previous interactions. The child was screaming and resisting. I don't know about you, but when I see a child screaming and resisting, you don't necessarily know the person you're with. You're usually a lot calmer than that. And second of all, I mean, of course, if you've seen the Facebook video or YouTube video, which has the full ongoing expletive-filled areas, it's just like, again, the boy was allegedly caught for stealing a bag of chips. Police detained him and decided to take him to his parents. Now, that sounds all well and good, but perception is everything. And we've seen videos of law enforcement taking younger children, and let's be honest, younger Black children, and treating them like grown adults. Which, again, you detain him for a bag of chips. I'm sure there are serious other crimes out there than shoplifting under $5. On top of that, again, it's like, you're taking the child to his parent. Correct me if I'm wrong here for any of those who are social worker cases out here, but if a child is involved, doesn't that normally mean that there needs to be a social worker present? I mean, cops can't just take away children. I mean, there has to be a social worker there to defend the need to basically protect the rights of the child. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to think the simple fact of the matter is that's not a teenager. It needs a social worker. But it just brings us this whole point again. It's like the way they treated the child. The way they treated the child is almost like a grown man. And so, of course, they're going to sit there and look at it. They're going to sit there and say, well, was the child affected? Did you harm him? Those officers will get nothing more than a slap on the wrist. And like I said before, they'll just be allowed to participate as if it's normal. But what are we saying to the child? Because a lot of people don't understand, especially those under white privilege, don't get that, yes, police and black people have a history. I mean, aside from the historical reference of it all being officials when they used to catch runaway slaves, overseer, officer, just saying. At the same time, we do have that stigma. Black people tense up when we see blue and white, especially on us. Given our recent history, I can't blame them for that. And to see your child to be detained by police is a whole nother matter. But the mayor at the time kind of was BSing, in my opinion. Well, the way this looks like, we need to actually help our families and children in our communities. Yeah, that's a lot of vague statements for you doing nothing. See, this is why I sit there and say about the whole defund the police. Say what you want. Defund the police may have not been the exact catchphrase for everybody to get onto, especially those who are secretly back the blue or Blue Lives Matter, you supporters that just can't seem to be found on social media except in your little private circles. Yeah, I'm talking about you. The only times you ever hear defund the police, they immediately think, oh, we're just gonna basically make our law enforcement broke. No, it's basically, again, for all those that don't know, you're not defunding the police per se. What you're actually doing is less weapon. You're not turning them into a small private army as far as giving them tools and weapons and vehicles that are preserved for our military, but you're actually taking some of that money that you're giving law enforcement and actually re-injecting the communities. Because again, when communities don't have, and the case in point, when you don't have high graduation rates, when you don't have high jobs, when you don't have high rates of jobs, when you basically have higher crimes, theft, and things of that nature, what do you expect is going to happen? And where this usually happen? Urban areas. Black people. Urban's the new black. Urban's the word they use for black people, you don't know. But that's what they do it for. Because when you take away all the financial, job, and other educational and other opportunities away from a neighborhood, crime is going to rise. At the same time, law enforcement, again, which Joe is proving a lot of his benefactors right, because when they said Joe was going to come back, he wasn't the only person. I got to point this out with the 94 crime bill. He may have sponsored it, but Democrats and Republicans both voted for it. But at the same time, it seems like he's giving another version of it by giving more money to law enforcement, which again works with moderates and works with Republicans. But progressives and environmental people, which another stories we get to later, are going to be left out in the cold. But again, it's just another example of why black people do not trust police and why some police are still confused over why that is. Videos like that. Moving right along, guys, I did want to cover the next story because Ron DeSantis is taking his war with Disney. I wish I could make this up. He is literally and figuratively trying to basically dismantle Disney. Because keep in mind, what I did not know in Florida is that Disney has its own government, if you will. I mean, it has its own building permits, its own security force, because they are constantly building, and that allows them special permissions inside Florida. I mean, if you're bringing in nearly $1 billion a year in tourism alone to Florida, I think that gives you kind of special permissions. Well, Governor DeSantis has decided that within this week, that Republican lawmakers are going to be advancing a pair of bills that are targeting dignity and Republicans. I'm sorry, but he's advancing a pair of bills that's going to target Disney, basically over their objections to his parental rights and education bill, otherwise known as the Don't Say Gay bill law that he signed in place. So he is basically going to go after Disney. I cannot stress this enough that this is shooting yourself in the foot and reloading. You're going to kill one of your greatest tourism attractions in Florida because a multi-billion dollar company doesn't agree. Keep in mind that multi-billion dollar company went after their own CEO for not acting fast enough as far as speaking out against the Don't Say Gay bill and being an LGBTQ plus ally. At the same time, Disney employees did stage walkouts in protest to Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay bill. And yet, Governor DeSantis, who is possibly a 2024 Republican presidential candidate, another Trump in the making, is now trying to go after them. And I'm just saying, for the simple fact of the matter is, Disney's got an undefeated record. That's all I'm saying. Whatever Disney wants, they acquire. And like I said before, if you're bringing $1 billion plus in revenue dollars to the state of Florida, does Florida really want to lose a battle where one of their greatest attractions in tourism and things of that nature, let's just say, uproots and goes somewhere else and the money goes with it? You don't think Florida's going to feel that sting? Oh, they're going to feel it and then some, despite the fact that you do have many other theme parks. But let's be honest, one of the main attractions to Florida, aside from beaches, is Disneyland. You hear it all the time in sports events. You just won the Super Bowl. Where are you going? I'm taking my people to Disneyland. You hear that all the time. Again, DeSantis only, this just goes to show you when it comes to Republicans, DeSantis and Republicans, if you're in their state and you oppose them, they will use their power to actually either bankrupt you or bring you to heel. However, I don't think DeSantis is going to be very successful bringing the mouse, because I said before, the mouse is undefeated. Although there is some wonderful things that are happening, and I hope this does go through. Marjorie Taylor Greene, remember her? The woman who basically says everything foul, almost is a QAnon supporter, has sat there and ticked off politicians, both fellow politicians, has been kicked off of every committee that she was assigned to, and yet somehow she still gets paid for doing nothing. Well, we might be rid of her, hopefully, in this midterm election. Why? Because a federal judge on Monday has moved forward that her candidacy could be disqualified. Reasons being because she allegedly helped in the January 6th failed coup by white supremacists. A judge did schedule a hearing in Georgia that will take place this Friday. The judge will hear arguments from both sides and will ultimately decide if the Constitution's disqualification clause applies to Greene. Now, if you're wondering what that is, it's basically from the Civil War, which says office holders who support an insurrection are prohibited from serving again. Which, if we're looking at the Barrow definition of it, but hopefully, if the judge does rule in this, and we are crossing our fingers, I know I am. Marjorie Taylor Greene offers nothing but dismantle confusion, and she gets paid for talking out of her ass. But then again, we had Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin crawled so that Marjorie Taylor Greene could spit BS. Yay! But anyway, if the judge rules in the favor of those liberal groups who are trying to bring a case forward, that means that her status could be disqualified and she can no longer hold public office. One can dream, but we will definitely follow that as it comes along this Friday. Now, Florida, like I said before, the current champion of the Hold My Beer competition, is not only in the news for DeSantis going against Disney. They have done something that honestly, you almost want to say you can't make this up, but at the same time, you can't make this up.
Florida leaders are making good on their promise, keeping critical race theory out of the classroom, something Governor Ron DeSantis said he wants codified into Florida law last year.
Nobody wants this crap.
The Florida Department of Education already banned CRT from K-12 public schools last summer. Now, the DOE announced it rejected the dozens of textbooks shown on this list. 54 math books that publishers submitted to the state. It's the largest textbook rejection in Florida history. The DOE's reasons? Some books don't align to state standards, and others include prohibited topics or unsolicited strategies, like CRT.
Stick to the script. Stick to what's in the curriculum and don't go off script.
Ashley Hall is the chair of the conservative parents group Moms for Liberty in Brevard County.
It's good to know that the state is holding true to what they're saying they're going to do with the laws that have passed. And I think that it needs to open up a discussion of what is appropriate in curriculum and what's not.
The DOE hasn't revealed those CRT examples. The governor's office says that's because the material is confidential and proprietary. But the Orange County Teachers Union plans to find out, especially in light of their little library stocked with banned books from this year. It's a mission that Jen Cousins shares as co-founder of the Florida Freedom to Read Project.
That's when indoctrination happens, when you whittle down so narrowly what information people can access.
Public school districts say they don't even teach CRT. Cousins says this is Florida closing the book on what's important.
They're trying to whitewash history. It's just another way that the Republicans are starting culture wars that we don't need.
In Orlando, Marlene Martinez.
You know, like I said, things I wish I can make up. Keep in mind, CRT is not being taught anywhere in any school. Unless your child has pulled a Doogie Howser and has breezed through K through 12 and is currently sitting in a law school, that is the only way that critical race theory is being taught. Again, critical race theory is not being taught anywhere. Nowhere. But Florida, the king of the Hold My Beer competition, reigning champion so far, 2 years running, has now decided that math must contain critical race theory. You know what? Those same Floridians are going to be pretty pissed off when they find out that math is non-binary. I should have a rim shot for that. But again, this is the thing. This is what bothers me so much. There is nothing. Math in itself is the purest form of trial and error. It is science. It is literally you follow a formula, you get a certain solution, you check see how you get a certain solution, it works out. It's a beautiful thing. But what kills me about all this is that you think critical race theory. How is critical race theory? And I have to point this out. How's critical race theory in math? Because it's almost amazing where it's like you get these parents that sit there and say, well, critical race theory is in there. Really? Where? Oh, well, we can't tell you right now. It's actually confidential. So you want me to trust you because you somehow saw it, raised the flag about public schools teaching it, but I'm supposed to believe you because you saw it, but you can't show me. Right. Why does it sound like, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, concealed carry argument? That's what it sounds like to me. It's like, oh, well, you should trust me. No, I don't. Just because you conceal carry doesn't mean I trust you. Well, you should trust me. You'll be happy. I said, no, that's the mindset of you're thinking that you can stop something because you're armed. Again, most situations where concealed carry increase in possible harm to others, not decreases. At the same time, with this whole thing about critical race theory, in a math book, I'm sorry, parents. Here's my thing. And I'm going to say this very nicely for these parents out here. If you're a parent and you think because your education, and like I said before, if you're not an educator, number one, you're not an educator. You don't have a master's in education. You don't have a master's in child psychology. You don't have a master's or a PhD in child psychology. You are not a program designer as far as the actual curriculums, educational curriculums. And on top of all that, if the greatest example of your idea is the fact that you sometimes homeschool your children, please kindly shut the fuck up. Because here's my thing. If you're not qualified to run an educational program to where it teaches kids from K through 12, you have no leg to stand on. You have none. You have no leg to stand on. Matter of fact, how dare you question others for doing a job, which they don't get paid for a lot, by the way, but you're going to question the curriculum because you believe it's not worth kids. Here's my thing. If you question your kid's curriculum that much, do us all a favor. Take your kids out of whatever school system that they are in and homeschool them. If you feel so strongly, don't try to change the public school system to where you'll have a whole bunch of kids forced to submit to your way of logical thinking. Do us all a favor. Take your kids out of whatever school system that they are in, homeschool them, and see how far you get. It's that simple. But then again, it's Florida. We shouldn't be surprised. Unfortunately, Florida is still in the news because thanks to a Florida judge, a lot of you guys are happy that you can now travel without masks.
Florida striking down the federal travel mask mandate, saying the CDC overstepped its authority. Just moments ago, the Biden administration saying no more masks required on planes and public transportation. And of course, this all comes amid this spike in new COVID cases in at least 34 states. The original travel mask mandate was set to expire today, but the Biden administration, as we reported right here, had just extended it for 2 more weeks because the CDC is concerned with these new numbers, the spike in new cases fueled by the Omicron subvariant. But tonight, it's now believed the airlines will no longer require masks. With this comes concern, of course, from the largest flight attendants union, alarmed by the new cases and by the changing rules they'll have to enforce. But again, tonight, the TSA will no longer enforce the mask mandate. Mary Bruce standing by live at the White House. The response from the Biden administration just in. But first, ABC's Eva Pilgrim leading us off on this ruling from a Florida judge changing the rule and where we are in this country amid these new cases tonight.
Tonight, masks are no longer required on planes and public transit after a federal judge in Florida overturned the federal mask mandate, saying the rule exceeds the CDC's statutory authority. The decision by the judge appointed by former President Donald Trump signals another sweeping change for Americans.
I think it's for our own protection because obviously COVID is still going around. So if we have to do it when we're inside doors, it's fine with me.
I think people are just so tired of wearing masks. And so I think it's a good idea.
The travel mask mandate was supposed to expire today until the CDC extended it for a 5th time until May 3rd, pointing to a wave of new COVID infections fueled by the BA.2 subvariant.
So this is obviously a disappointing decision. The CDC continues recommending wearing a mask in public transit.
Tonight, the administration saying TSA will not enforce mask use in public transportation and transportation hubs at this time. The CDC recommends that people continue to wear masks in indoor public transportation settings. But Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian saying it's time to move past mask mandates.
We've done it for 2 years, and it's time to move beyond that and now make that the responsibility of individuals.
It comes as the battle over masks heats up all over again. The city of Philadelphia today putting its indoor mask mandate back into effect to curb a spike in new cases.
Being careful. Yeah. And being careful is the good thing. It's just the best way to be.
But some frustrated businesses and residents are now suing to stop the mask rule.
People are just generally have had enough of this sort of government overreach.
All right, so here's where we are tonight. Eva with us live, and Eva, the bottom line, no federal travel mask mandate moving forward. So the airlines are no longer going to require this?
That's right, David. The airlines for weeks have been lobbying the federal government to lift this mask mandate. And the airlines saying tonight they will not require passengers for now to wear those masks on planes. The flight attendants union asking for patience and calm and reminding people that you can wear a mask if you want to. David?
Yes, let's keep that in mind. Give everyone the space they need to make up their own mind. And of course, let's think about those flight crews who've had to.
No. I'm sorry. No. See, no. No. Allowing. Okay. I'm all for the simple fact of the matter that you're trying to allow people to make up their own mind. However, letting them make up their own mind is the reason why we're still dealing with COVID now. We told people, you don't have to be mandated to get this. You're not mandated to get the vaccine. It's your choice. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people got sick. A lot of cases appeared. Then it became a little bit more suggested. Then we finally sat there and said, look, we're getting the shot and moving forward. We're not forcing you to do it, but hey, life is going to get a little bit more difficult for you without that vaccine. And even now, and again, that's why I say, I know what it is about Florida. Florida is currently, they're wanting to make sure that the Hold My Beer Championship sticks with them because they keep on saying government overreach. Well, I shouldn't have to wear a mask. Would you prefer the alternative? Because you don't wear a mask, I guarantee you'll go running to whatever hospital you're in once you have a breathing problem, and that breathing problem is a little bit more than what you're used to. You will go running to the doctor. The same doctor that said you need to wear a vaccine, the same doctor that said you should get a vaccine, the same doctor that said that you should wear a mask, the same doctor that wanted you to do all these things to avoid you going to the hospital, but you're going to go running to him because, as you notice, COVID survival rates not that high, but you're traveling. And now I admit, I still hope for one day for America to have a U.S. high-speed rail system that doesn't cost an arm and a leg to take. That I would like to think that in my home state of Tennessee, I would like to think I could hop across a high-speed trans rail and go to the West Coast or the East Coast or go north or even go farther south. I would like to think that it's still possible within my lifetime in this country. But in the meantime, I mean, people who travel by bus, by plane, or by trains, it scares me to think that within these people, around these people, there's going to be one or two or three that might still carry COVID, that might be asymptomatic, but still might carry COVID and still get me sick or get someone else sick. Imagine one person that carries COVID enters a room of 20 people. Those 20 people have been potentially exposed and either may catch COVID or at least be asymptomatic and provide COVID to someone else. Masks reduce the transmission of COVID to others. And people see it as an inconvenience. I don't. I wear a mask when I go to the grocery store. I wear a mask when I go out. The only times I've never had a mask on is when I am almost sure that I'm at least about a good 30 or 40 feet away from the nearest person who could be in my vicinity. That's the only time. But again, it's like, what is so uncomfortable about wearing a mask? Did you not understand that an entire industry on masks has ballooned out? I mean, the N95 masks were all cool. The KN95 masks were all cool and whatnot, but we saw how quickly they were getting bought by the payload, by the pallet load. And even then, you had people making home masks. You had people that made a whole business out of selling masks, and it's cool. But I don't think we should allow people to make up their own minds because, in the words of Men in Black, people are smart. Humans are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. True words were never said by Tommy Lee Jones. But this whole idea about releasing the mask mandate and that calling it government overreach is a reach in itself. Because, again, if the same things were said during polio when we were dealing with that, I wonder how many people would still have an opinion. I only wonder. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover the next bit that we had. That Biden is back in the news again. And, of course, the next bit of information that we show here, a lot of environmental and climate activists are not going to like because this is a reversal of policy for Biden as he's trying to deal with the fact that dinosaur juice is high and the cost of the pump is costing more than the arm and leg. And instead of going after the energy and oil consumption people by doing a windfall profits tax and removing their subsidiaries, he decides to say, you know what, guys, for the right price, you can drill on public land. I wish I could make this up.
Is responding to calls to boost U.S. oil production by reselling leases for drilling on public land. The move is aimed at lowering gas prices, but it also breaks a campaign promise, angering climate activists. ABC's Faith Abube joins me live now to talk more about this. Faith, the White House says that they basically had no choice after a federal judge ordered that these sales resume. How much of this was out of the president's hands?
Well, according to the White House, this is as much out of their hands as it possibly could be. You know, they're saying that this is coming about because of that ruling by a federal judge in Louisiana. And so they had to comply by this order. But of course, as you mentioned, environmental activists are upset by this. They're saying this is a reckless failure of climate leadership. And this, of course, is exactly what the president campaigned against. And so President Biden is now caught in this tough position. When he came into office, he tried to fulfill this campaign promise and signed an executive order pausing the sale of new leases. But now this reversal, again, the administration is saying that they have to comply by this because of this order from this federal judge in Louisiana. But of course, starting today, this lease, the sale of the leases are happening again. The federal government once again selling these leases for oil and gas development on public lands. This is happening across 9 states, 144,000 acres in total.
And the White House is also increasing the royalties that companies have to pay for this drilling. What was behind that move?
Yeah, so I think part of the decision, when it comes to that specifically, is the fact that because they're doing something that President Biden campaigned against, they want to be able to actually restrict some of it, right? And so they're increasing the payments on the royalties, but also in addition to that, they're cutting back how much land is available for the drilling on public lands. So they're cutting it back by 80%. Climate activists, of course, are still upset by this. Progressive Democrats are upset by this. Republicans are upset by this. Oil industry groups are also upset by this. So all sides at this point are not happy. This is happening, of course, as you mentioned. There's a lot of pressure on President Biden as gas prices soar for several reasons, including the war in Ukraine. The administration right now is hoping that it'll be able to boost oil production with this move and bring gas prices down. They're walking this fine line here to keep all sides happy, but we're expecting to hear more about this decision coming up later on this afternoon during the White House press briefing.
And Faith, the ultimate goal here is to lower gas prices. So how long will it take before Americans start to see those benefits from these lease sales?
Well, no one expects this to actually be immediate. You know, it's not going to happen right away, as much as everyone would like to see it happen. You know, some estimates say that this could happen, in months, if not up to a year, before we could actually see enough new drilling or enough new oil production to affect the supply here. So it's not going to be something that happens overnight. Gas prices are not going to go down overnight. We're expecting this to take a few months at least before we see it affect Americans.
So the other thing I have about this is, so you're going to sit there and say, and again, I have arguments with this. I have arguments with this with number one, that understand gas prices shot up under a matter of hours. Keep in mind, when Russia decided to do a terrorist act and invade Ukraine, Russia is the number 2 producer of oil, right after Iraq. Iraq is the number 1 producer of oil in the world. Russia's number 2. We were only taking less percent. And I said, here's the things that didn't make any sense. We were taking less than 8% of Russian oil before this happened. A lot of our oil production was still coming from the Middle East, considering that little piece of strait area, the little island strait that every tanker goes through, because that's the only way in and out to get back to basically our shores. Okay, so fine. We had a war. Production goes up. Production is limited, but production isn't limited by war. Production is limited because, well, oil is better than oil is more bad. Oil is more profitable by gold right now, which it is. It is. Oil companies know this. Energy companies know this. That is why they're not increasing production. Even when all these CEOs of all the oil and energy companies stood before Congress, and Congress asked, "Why are you not producing more to actually help consumers?" And these CEOs told these politicians to their face, because we answer the shareholders. We don't answer the American people. Told them to their face in so many words, the American people are not a responsibility. The shareholders are, as a CEO would think. But again, a lot of these oil companies are not getting a windfall profits tax, which can be paid, which these companies could pay, because keep in mind, corporations are making billion-dollar profits in a pandemic era. At the same time, they're still getting government help through subsidiaries. They're not getting hit with taxes. Some of them are paying almost $0 in taxes. At the same time, any additional money that they're getting, they're passing along to their CEOs, their senior leadership, and their shareholders. But yet, Biden, in his infinite wisdom, says, "Oh, well, we're just going to open up the ability for you guys to purchase more land permits to drill on public lands." So instead of actually punishing these companies by saying, "You know what, you guys are making so much money, we think we could pull stuff back and tax you," but you're now going to give these same said oil companies the ability to go, "Hey, you guys want to drill on more public lands? Just pay this, and you got it covered." That's not a solution. But then again, the energy solution has always been the same. Whenever alternative energies is brought up, whenever wind, water, and thermodynamic solutions are brought up, big oil rears its head. Because why? Big oil is kind of like white people. That you've been on top of the food chain for so long that you see something coming to knock you down a peg, you panic. And probably do some stupid shit, but you panic. And at the same time, big oil is still going to have Congress by the balls with its lobbying, because because you see a lot of progressive Democrats speak up against big oil, but none of the moderates. I don't see Pelosi talking about it. I don't see Schumer talking about it. I don't see Manchin, because Manchin, again, is a walking conflict of interest, especially with this coal mining state of West Virginia. The point I'm making is that this is not a good move, and it's amazing they're trying to sit there and say everybody's not happy. Somebody is. And I guarantee it's those very same people that will buy those permits and drill in areas that they didn't think they could get to until now. But there is one thing Biden is doing, but we're going to see if it happens right now. You probably heard this get mentioned a lot, if not on this podcast, but definitely others, or in the news itself, ghost guns, and why it's a big thing. Well, Biden did actually Biden actually did do a press conference on ghost guns, and this is what he said.
This is the gun. It's not hard to put together. A little drill, hand drill at home. Doesn't take very long. Anyone can order it in the mail. Anyone. Folks, a felon, a terrorist, a domestic abuser can go from a gun kit to a gun in as little as 30 minutes. Buyers aren't required to pass background checks because guns have no serial numbers, these guns. When they show up at a crime scene, they can't be traced. Law enforcement is sounding the alarm. Our communities are paying the price, and we're acting. Today, the United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal. The answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police and give them the tools and training to support they need to be better partners and protectors of our communities in need. And I've already made clear that I want cities, states, counties, and tribes to use some of the $350 billion we sent to them in the American Rescue Plan that I wrote in the first month to reduce gun violence, hire police officers for community policing, pay police overtime, purchase crime-fighting technologies. They were given the money, they can do it. Spend it.
Yeah, that's not a good look for you, Joe. I mean, for everybody sitting and say you're gonna get elected, they're like, we're gonna see the crime bill all over again. I'm like, ugh. If you weren't trying, if you were a person that sat there and shouted that Joe was gonna pull the crime bill thing again when he got elected, this is your moment of vindication. Aside from that, guys, what you don't know about ghost guns, like you said before, are kits that can be purchased. There are several companies out there that make ghost guns. The problem with ghost guns is they are kits, which means that they do not qualify as quote unquote firearms, which means that the firearm law of you being 21 or older does not apply. Which means that anybody, regardless if you are a felon, regardless if you are registered, regardless if you are a child or domestic abuser, you too, if you can find those kits, can assemble them, and bingo bango, you have a working firearm without a serial number, which is something that is required by the ATF for all firearms to have. The problem with that, guys, a lot of people are under the fear that these ghost guns could be also marketed as customizable guns, which for all those that are in the firearms community, they do like to buy certain parts to customize their firearms. And I stress this all the time because the argument is that this will not compare to that. Like I said before, ghost guns is really just a bigger problem of the gun laws the gun laws we actually have in this country. Me being a firearms owner myself, not only do I train, I actually look at the history and legalization and legislation of guns. And there is a big problem that, another thing about ghost guns is they did kind of want to update the definition of firearm to include ghost guns. So ghost guns could now have to be purchased in the same way a regular firearm is. Again, nothing wrong with that. But the problem is the serial number needs to be applied. There has to be a traceable route from manufacturer to owner to see in the event that the gun does show up in any type of case. Now, again, there shouldn't be a problem with that. But do you understand how many people are actually against this? And it's just scary to me that, you are literally and figuratively against ghost guns, which, in my opinion, they're not needed. And they only serve one purpose. It's not the fact that the customization industry, the firearms customization industry, is not going to take a hit. You want to know why? Because no manufacturer has yet to step up and say, well, this bill is going to affect our business. You have yet to hear one gun manufacturer say anything about ghost guns being a bad thing, banning ghost guns being a bad thing. You've yet to hear it. But there are those out there that feel differently, and I always say before in the comments field, please explain why. Because from my opinion, Joe is doing the right thing about trying to get ghost guns banned. The other part, however, we don't need to defund the police. We do need to fund them by giving them more money, more training, authorizing overtime. And I'm like, oh, it's the 94 crime bill all over again. Because that's always been the problem. The problem is we have always instituted the moderate Democrat Republican response. That when crime goes up, we just throw more police, more weapons at it, more specialized tactics, more privatization of law enforcement. That's what we do. And then on the flip side is you increase penalties for crimes, including longer jail time sentences, and that only benefits two people: the corporations that own prisons and the kickbacks to the state. The problem with defund the police is that, like I said before, I think like former President Obama said, defund the police may have not been the appropriate term for the movement, but the actual things behind the movement are sound. Instead of funding the police officers, fund the neighborhoods. Fund actual child care programs for after child care for these parents out here who need somewhere for their children to go. Fund after school programs, basketball, not just sports, because that's the thing that kills me. The first thing I would do is sports, but no, actually fund the arts, fund engineering, fund wood shops, metal shops, auto shops, the vocational training that can also be put in these neighborhoods where you can turn out more than just college graduates. That's the things I'm saying, because again, if you take that same money that you're going to give the law enforcement, give the communities to make sure that you are covering the educational, the financial, and the other opportunities that you can give, and crime will go down. But the problem is the progressive approach to that has only been implemented in areas where there's been more progressives than conservatives. But overall, Biden, it's a bad move. It's a bad move to follow up after saying you want to ban ghost guns to now it's like, no, we want to go back and fund law enforcement. But you guys got to remember, midterm elections. We are 5 months and counting away. We are 5 months and counting away from it. Democrats need some wins. Because again, it's going to be harder for Democrats to get votes than Republicans. Republicans who have literally done nothing this entire session, who have said voted no on everything, who have criticized Democrats, have done nothing. But I guarantee it'll be easier for them to get idiots for them to vote. It'll be easier to get Republicans to get idiots to vote for them again than it will be for Democrats, because Democrats don't have a lot of campaign promises that were met. Some of them have been reversed, and they're going to ask people to basically trust them again for another 8 years. It's going to be a fun time. But speaking of things that actually might help Democrats, I've said before, two things, by the way, if a Democrat ever watches this, two things that'll help you turn around and you will have a landslide majority of voters coming to you. And if you do two things, matter of fact, if you do one of them, one or two is a bonus. One, decriminalize marijuana. You have a bill going through the House right now about decriminalizing marijuana. If that bill is passed and it gets implemented within this year, overwhelming landslide. You damn near have guaranteed not only the House and the Senate, you would have guaranteed the next presidency. If Biden was able to pull that off and decriminalize marijuana within his first term, you have an overwhelming landslide into your next term. I guarantee that. Even though how ineffective Vice President Kamala Harris has been, you would have a landslide to your next term. The other one, student loans. Oh, which got kicked down the can again. It got kicked down the road again. But here's the thing about student loans. I have been saying this the whole entire time. We can forgive the entire student loan debt. It looks like the education department is starting to do that, especially because of one thing I wanted to point out. And the one thing I did want to point out was that they are going to be including, if you're a part of this group, if you're a part of this $40,000 borrowers under a student loan forgiveness program for public servants. Now, that's wide. A lot of us are not under the PSL loan, but that is also including a fix for those who are low-income student borrowers who are on an income-dependent derivative plan. Now, keep in mind, guys, the current student debt right now is somewhere around $1.57 trillion. Now, understand that if you're like me, you were probably on this income-driven repayment plan, which again it's kind of bullshit. You're paying only $25 to $50 a month, if that, and then after 20 or 25 years, they finally forgive the amount of your remaining loans. They've just now discovered, after multiple lawsuits, keep in mind, after multiple lawsuits, the Department of Education has realized that the income-driven repayment plans may be a little bit of a failure. Even more so that they are actually going to start changing policies. Now, what does that mean? They actually are about to go back into it and see about removing those on IDR plans, either going ahead and forgiving them for anywhere from 12 to 36 months of being under those plans, or they may forgive it entirely. Like I said before, at the beginning of this, 40,000 students at this point may have their entire student loans forgiven. And I have been saying this, I have been saying this, I have been saying this. If Biden wants to secure a bunch of voters, why doesn't he come out and say what he should have said when he was signed to presidency? When he sworn into the president's office on day one. If he did an executive order that says he wants student loans forgiven, yes, we can forgive $1.75 trillion, because you know why? We have spent literally over $2 trillion over 2 wars inside of 2 decades. We gave the Pentagon and the Department of Defense a blank check in which they have failed audit after audit because they can account for a single cent that was spent from starting from the war in Iraq to where we are now with Ukraine. They cannot account for anything. So you're telling me that we can give our defense a $2 trillion blank check because we're still paying them. We can actually give Ukraine, again, multi-million dollars in aid. But yet for the almost nearly 25 million Americans that are still having student loans, you're going to stand and tell me that we can't forgive 1.75 trillion. Biden, are you listening? Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, are you listening? You literally and figuratively could turn around and save us all, and all you have to do is come out and say, we're going to forgive all student loans. You would have solved your midterm issue. Because what are Republicans going to say? We don't want to help the American people by giving them a boost up. When you remove student loans, you actually improve the credit profiles of many Americans. Keep in mind, student loans prevent Americans from going for homes, for going for new vehicles, for trying to improve their way of life. Because again, for anybody that's a part of the credit game, that debt to income ratio is a mother. So only imagine if we removed, for a lot of us, the biggest part of our debt was student loan debt was gone. And number 2, you don't have to worry about something that's going to have to go away. But unfortunately, for it to go away, you have to go away. Or unless you come across and win the Powerball, which, good luck to that either. But like I said, Biden, you can solve a whole lot of problems if you just do 1 or 2. We're right along, guys. The family of Patrick Lyoya, as you guys know, we did talk about him last week in our midterm review. That was assassinated by the officer. The family did have an independent autopsy done, and again, goes to support the fact of what we already knew.
Been released for the unarmed black man who was shot and killed by an officer in Michigan. That autopsy was commissioned by the family of the victim, and video of the April 4th shooting appears to show Patrick Lyoya running from police, then being tackled by an officer there on your screen and struggling over his taser. NBC News' Shaquille Brewster is monitoring those developments for us. Shaq, what exactly did this autopsy find?
Yeah, Morgan, let me quickly set it up by saying that this is the autopsy that's commissioned by the family. This is not from the medical examiner. This is not the first autopsy that was done. But the autopsy commissioned by the family attorney showed that Patrick Lyoya was shot in the back of his head with that single shot by the Grand Rapids Police Department officer. That autopsy is still being presented right now. The forensic pathologist is still going through his findings, but the big headline from it is that they say that he was shot in the back of the head. All that we knew to this point was that he was shot in the head, Morgan.
And Shaq, how is the family responding? I know you made it clear that this is their autopsy. How are they responding to the video, to the outrage, to this autopsy?
Yeah, I spoke with them yesterday, and you heard from his parents saying that they were devastated, that they were heartbroken. His mother told me that she misses his presence and his voice. They were not at this press conference as this was being presented by the forensic pathologist. By the way, the pathologist that did the autopsy of MLK, that did the autopsy of JFK, that was also involved in Michael Jackson's autopsy. They were not there and present for this. And I believe we actually have some sound from that press conference. I want you to play a little bit of it, and it gives you a sense of why the family wasn't there for these details that were being announced.
Based on scientific evidence, we can confirm that Patrick Iola was shot in the back of his head. That is now scientific evidence of this tragic killing and what his family believes was an execution.
You heard Ben Crump use that word execution. That's the same word that the family used with me last week. The demands that they have right now, and this is consistent from my conversations with them even last week and what you've heard through the weekend, is they want the officer that fired that fatal shot. They want him publicly identified. They say that's important for their grieving process. They want that officer to then be fired and prosecuted. We do know that Patrick Lyoya, he will have his funeral service on Friday morning.
Oh, just a sad situation.
So again, it's one of those situations where, it does confirm what we already knew, which was the fact of the matter is just that, well, he was shot in the back, which tells us, it's one thing to sit there and say execution, but again, let's call it what it is. He chases man, he wrestles man, they wrestle taser, he goes for gun. Pow. Somebody's got to explain how he got shot in the back of the head. Because he can do it. But again, I do understand what the family's trying to do. They want the officer to be identified. And much like law enforcement does not want another Darren Floyd. They don't want another Floyd out there. Do you want to know why? They don't want another They don't want another George Floyd issue where the officer was identified. You know what happens when the officer's identified? Because the same character assassination they do to us when we can't speak for ourselves in the court of public opinion, Fox News, everywhere else, is the same thing that they will do to that officer. And again, trust me, that officer is protected, hidden, probably got better security than the president. Why? Because the simple fact of the matter is, I guarantee if someone is on Twitter, they can find out who he is. Twitter's good. Twitter's good at that. At the same time, yes, he should be, he's got to explain by a jury of his peers why in the world he pulled his gun in a situation that did not call for it, even more so why he felt the need to shoot Patrick Lyoya in the back of his head. We'll follow that story as it comes along. But hey, moving along, guys, we want to go into our feel-good segment because usually how the Frack got here, we cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's hump day. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday, and we just want to send you guys out some positive, good vibes and things of that nature. And hopefully I've done just that with this story, which again, the pandemic has shown a lot of people, different sides of themselves, starting their own businesses and really going out there enjoying life when we're so used to the rat race that used to be our lives before COVID. This young woman did exactly that and found her passion, and I am all for it.
Delicious dessert company springing from a family tradition. It has some Jamaican-American roots. One entrepreneur's voyage from her day job into vegan cookies. Check this out.
I always knew that I wanted to help people. And then I started working in education nonprofits. And over time, I realized that I enjoyed doing that, but there was something that I enjoyed even more, which was baking and finding a way to accommodate different people through my delicious baked goods. I was raised in Miami, Florida with a Jamaican family. I acquired my taste palette surrounded by all of these different flavors, foods. And so I grew up with a fresh coconut tree right outside my front door, sugarcane, and fresh mangoes. And so these flavors that I grew up with were all things that inspired what I chose to use in my cookies today.
It's nice.
Yeah, it literally tastes like a molasses cookie. This is a really good one as well.
Tubby's Taste is a boldly flavored, Jamaican-inspired, surprisingly vegan cookie company. Our cookies are also nut and soy free.
Best vegan cookies I've ever had. They're so soft, you would never know they're vegan.
Safe to say that baking is in my blood. My mom, my aunt, and my grandmother, who I like to call my cake ladies, they would spend countless hours making traditional cakes, and they had me help them out. I think there's something important about seeing people who look like you doing something that gives you the confidence to think that you can too. I liked making things that fit the criteria of being vegan, but also had approachable ingredients and passed my taste test. My family has always been really hardworking. It's a great feeling to know that you're making your family proud and that you're laying down some additional roots for the future generations to know that whatever they dream of, they can become.
In today's
Okay,
lowering
sorry about that,
prices
guys.
on bikes and
There we go. Sorry. It got a little bit faster than I thought it would. But I thought that was cool. I mean, like I said before, finding your passion and things of that nature is one of those things where it's cool. Especially that she said, wait, these are vegan. Now, don't get me wrong, vegan cookies are cool. I'm not exactly vegan myself. I had a vegan cheesecake. I thought it was pretty awesome from Kate Sweets here in Tennessee. But, you know, I'll give it a try one day. Plus, it's black. It's all about black folks. I'm sorry. I am unapologetically black. I am rooting for everybody black to succeed, regardless if I know you're not. But that being said, guys, that's really going to do it for this podcast. So let me go ahead and get to our shameless plugging as we usually do. Shout out to the guys at Geek Salad, RE&Geek% Geek Salad, for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. A couple of guys I've met last year and do love talking to them. They are definitely a great group of guys that do talk about the world of pop culture and things outside of it through an unfiltered but highly open forum, which is funny, which is intelligent, it is informing, and I get a kick out of watching both of them. So definitely check them out on YouTube as you're seeing there, as well as Facebook under the bigger name Geek Salad. Also, shout out to my boy Vaughn at Big BZA Dot. You can find him at the Vaughn Westwood on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on socials, where he has his Smoking Trail Sundays and the Random Live Clip Video podcast on his page. So definitely check him out, at the Vaughn Westwood on Facebook and Big BZA Dot on all socials. Also, for me, guys, you can tell my IG handle, BlackBox447, is where you can find me, as I usually post reviews of movies, video games, television shows, and reviews, things of that nature, and gym stuff, because I do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, guys, I am all about positivity this year. We have been through a rough couple of years, and my whole thing going forward is to motivate, is to encourage, is to push forward, because we all need a little bit of help. We all need a little bit of encouragement. We all need to lean on somebody. Oh, that was a terrible segue. We all need somebody to lean on. Bill Withers. But just saying, that's what I try to do, and hopefully I can do that for you. Hopefully, and passing that along and do that for as well. Also, again, guys, be kind. It takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything in you to be a dick. And trust me, being kind, whether you can do it for somebody, whether it's a minute, day, an hour, a lifetime, go ahead and do so. The world could use more of it. Also, at the same time, guys, like I said, COVID is still around. COVID is still around. Please wear a mask. Please protect yourselves at all times. The more we do that, the more we can actually lower our chances of we can actually increase our chances of beating this thing all around. Aside from that, the last thing I'll say about how the Frack got here is all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are just giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind, but we provide a logical perspective beside it. We do a lot better when in society we're informed. But progressively, we move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like elect our first Black female Supreme Court Justice, Kajani Brown Jackson. You doggone right. I'm going to keep saying that. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, for the simple fact of the matter is, why is everything going up at your paycheck? Why are we still electing the same, electing different politicians, but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the Frack did we get here? Thank you all for watching. And if you're watching this playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys, your opinions on everything we discussed today. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this.